So, I guess I should start at the beginning. I'm Ethan, and up until recently, I was basically my family's personal ATM. I'm 26 now, and the pressure cooker finally blew its top. Growing up, my parents, bless their hearts, were, let's just say, financially challenged. They worked hard, don't get me wrong, but they never planned. It was always paycheck to paycheck, no savings, no real ambition to climb the ladder. They were content, I suppose, in their little rut. But contentment doesn't pay the bills, and it definitely doesn't send someone to college. From the time I was old enough to hold a broom, I was working. Not because they forced me, but because I saw the strain on their faces. I saw the collection notices piling up on the kitchen counter. So, I mowed lawns, shoveled snow, bussed tables, anything I could do. By the time I graduated high school, I already had more work experience than half the adults I knew. I never even considered college. It wasn't an option. I needed to earn. So I hustled. I landed a gig unloading trucks at a warehouse in the mornings. It was brutal work, but it paid. Nights, I bartended at a dive bar downtown. Weekends were spent sweating in a security uniform, breaking up fights at concerts and sporting events. It was a grind, a constant soul-crushing grind. But it paid the rent, kept the lights on, and allowed me to dream. I dreamt of owning a small place of my own. Maybe taking a vacation. Hell, just being able to sleep in on a Saturday would have felt like winning the lottery. But dreams are a luxury you can't afford when your family's got their hands out. That's where my sister, Chloe, comes in. 4 years younger than me, and the undisputed queen of the house. Chloe was the golden child, spoiled rotten. Our parents worshipped her. Where I was told to toughen up and be responsible, she was coddled and indulged. Don't get me wrong, I loved her, but the double standard always stung. Then came the college announcement. Chloe, with her head full of dreams of corner offices and corporate jets, wanted to study business. A lawyer. My parents were ecstatic. They envisioned her as their ticket out of their dead-end lives. At first, I was proud. She had ambition. She had a plan. She swore she'd apply for scholarships, work-study programs, everything. I helped her research schools, fill out financial aid forms, the whole 9 yards. I was the supportive big brother, thrilled to see her finally reaching for something. That's when the facade started to crumble. Scholarships didn't materialize. Work-study programs fell through. Suddenly, it was all on me. "Ethan," she said one night, her voice dripping with that practiced helplessness. "College is just so expensive, you know?" Of course, I knew. I knew it better than she ever would. I'd sacrifice that dream for myself. But maybe, just maybe, if I could help her avoid some of the struggles I'd faced, it would be worth it. I told myself it would only be for a year or 2. I'd help her get started, and then she'd be on her own 2 feet. I paid for her tuition, her books, her dorm room. She promised she'd get a job to cover the rest. The job never happened. Instead, the requests for money started. "Ethan, I need new textbooks. The professor said they're mandatory. Another $300 gone? Ethan, my laptop just died. I can't do my assignments without a new one. Hello, credit card debt. Ethan, everyone else has a car. It's impossible to get around without one." A car? Seriously? Each time it was something new. Each time I caved. I rationalized it. It was temporary. Once she graduated, got a good job, she'd be set. But with every call, every payment, every sacrifice, I felt myself sinking deeper, deeper into exhaustion, deeper into debt. And then came the breaking point. The phone rang just as I was clocking out of my warehouse job. I was covered in grime, sweat stinging my eyes, ready to collapse. It was Chloe. I answered, already bracing myself. She launched straight into it, a breathless litany of complaints about how hard everything was, how much she needed. I barely registered half of it. My brain was still trying to process the fact that I'd just spent the last 8 hours hauling boxes in 90-degree heat. Then she dropped the bomb. "Ethan, I really need a car. It's too hard to walk everywhere. I can't be successful like this." A car. The word hung in the air, mocking me. Something inside me snapped. A low simmer of resentment that had been building for years finally boiled over. "A car?" I choked out, my voice tight with suppressed rage. "Are you serious, Chloe? I'm working 3 jobs so you can go to school. Do you have any idea what this is doing to me?" She sighed. that exaggerated, put-upon sigh she always used when she thought I was being dramatic. "Ethan, come on! It's not enough. I can't live like this anymore." It's not enough. The words echoed in my head, a punch to the gut. I had sacrificed my time, my health, my own dreams for her. I had poured every spare dime I had into her education, and now she had the audacity to tell me it wasn't enough? A cold, hard resolve settled over me. "Chloe, no, I'm done." The line went silent. "What do you mean, done? You can't just stop helping me. You said you'd support me through college." "I said I'd help. I didn't say I'd ruin my life for you." I hung up. I knew exactly what would happen next. The tears, the accusations, and then the inevitable pilgrimage to Mom and Dad. Sure enough, my phone blew up that night. Texts from my mom. "Ethan, you're upsetting your sister. She needs you right now. You can't leave your family like this." A long, rambling voicemail from my dad about obligation and loyalty. I ignored them all. The next day, I made a decision. I was done tiptoeing around their feelings. I was done being the responsible one. If Chloe and my parents thought they could milk me forever, they were in for a rude awakening. I drove to my parents' house where Chloe still lived. It was time for a showdown, a reckoning. I was ready for war. I showed up at my parents' house the next morning, steeling myself for the inevitable explosion. Chloe was already there, slumped on the couch, looking like a kicked puppy. My mom and dad were in the kitchen, both sporting that familiar expression, the one that silently accused me of being the villain before I even opened my mouth. "Ethan, you really upset your sister," my mom began, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Of course I did," I shot back, my voice flat. "Because apparently working 3 jobs isn't enough to keep her happy." Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's not about being happy, Ethan. It's about having what I need to be successful. You wouldn't understand." I almost laughed. "You want to talk about not understanding struggle? I've sacrificed everything to keep you in school while you sit back and ask for more every time I turn around. And now you think you deserve a car too? You just want to control me," she snapped, her voice rising. "Control you?" I was incredulous. "I'm done helping you, Chloe." "That's not control. That's standing up for myself." That's when my dad jumped in, puffing out his chest like he was about to defend the honor of the queen. "You're being dramatic, Ethan. It's your responsibility to help the family. We all have to stick together." "Funny how you suddenly believe in responsibility," I retorted, the sarcasm dripping from my voice. "Where's your responsibility, Dad? You've been sitting around for years expecting me to take care of everything." My mom gasped, clutching her chest. "How dare you talk to your father like that? We raised you better than that." "No, you didn't," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You raised me to be your backup plan, because neither of you ever had one." Before things could escalate any further, the front door swung open with a dramatic flourish. What the hell is going on in here? It was my Aunt Linda, my mom's younger sister. She had a knack for inserting herself into everyone else's problems, and she was fiercely protective of Chloe. I groaned inwardly. This was the last thing I needed. "Oh, great," I muttered under my breath. Linda didn't waste any time taking sides. "Ethan, you have to stop being so selfish. Your sister is trying to better herself. Isn't that what you want for your family? To succeed?" "Don't start, Linda," I said through clenched teeth. "You don't know half of what's going on." "Please," she scoffed. "I know exactly what's going on. You're acting like a martyr instead of doing what any decent brother would do." She crossed her arms, her expression smug. "Chloe needs support, not lectures." I was about to lose it when I heard another voice from behind her. "You're wrong, Linda. Ethan has done more than enough." Everyone turned to see my grandmother standing in the doorway. I hadn't even realized she was coming over. Unlike Aunt Linda, my grandmother wasn't one to put up with anyone's crap. She had a soft spot for me because she knew how hard I'd worked over the years. "Mom, this is none of your business," my mother said nervously. "It concerns me when you and Linda gang up on Ethan like he's some kind of villain. He's carried this family for years, and now you're all upset because he finally said no." Aunt Linda scoffed. "Oh, come on. He's being dramatic. No one forced him to take on all this responsibility, did they?" "You were all too comfortable letting him do everything," Grandma shot back. "Well, that's over now." For a moment, I felt a wave of relief. Someone finally understood what I'd been going through, but the relief was short-lived. Aunt Linda wasn't going to go down without a fight. "Ethan is just bitter," Linda said, her voice dripping with venom. "And now he's taking it out on his sister. He's probably just jealous that she has a chance to make something of herself." "Jealous?" I repeated, stunned. "Of what? Of being broke and working myself into the ground while she coasts through life?" "Stop it, all of you!" Chloe shouted, standing up abruptly. "I'm sick of it. If you all care so much about family, then you should want to help me. I didn't ask to be born into a family where I have to beg for everything." That struck a nerve with Grandma. "Oh, don't you dare play the victim, young lady. You're not entitled to Ethan's money, or anyone's for that matter. You want a car? Earn it." Chloe crossed her arms and glared at me. "Fine. If you're not going to help, don't expect me to take care of you when I'm successful." I shook my head. "I don't need you to care. I'm done with all that. And while we're on the subject of money, I think it's time we had a bigger conversation." Everyone froze. They knew something serious was about to happen. I took a deep breath and dropped the bombshell. "I'm tired of paying for everything. Chloe's school, your bills, all of it. And you know what else? I'm selling this house." My mom's face went pale. "What? You bought this house for us. You can't just sell it." "Oh, I can, and I will. You've taken me for granted for too long. You want to survive. Figure it out for yourselves. I'm not your lifeline anymore." The room erupted into chaos. My parents yelled at each other. Linda tried to argue with Grandma, and Chloe stormed off in tears. I stood there and let them all scream, feeling strangely calm for the first time in years. But that was just the beginning of the fallout. I had just declared war on my own family, and things were about to get a whole lot messier. After I dropped the bomb about selling the house, the shouting match went on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I just walked out, let them yell at each other. I was done. The house wasn't even paid off. I was still making mortgage payments on it because I thought it would give my parents some stability. Funny how that worked out. A few days later, the calls and texts started up again. Mom wanted to talk things out. Dad sent me a long, guilt-tripping message about how disappointed he was in me. Chloe, of course, was silent, probably still sulking. Aunt Linda left me a scathing voicemail, calling me heartless and asking how I could sleep at night knowing I was destroying my family. The only person who didn't harass me was Grandma. She called me once just to check in and see if I was okay. I really appreciated that. I began to think the storm would eventually die down. I was wrong. It got worse. One night, after I finished my bartending shift, I walked to my car in the parking lot. It was dark and the lot was mostly empty. As I unlocked the door, a man stepped out from behind a nearby SUV. He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket. I immediately tensed up. Something about his posture, the way he moved, screamed trouble. "You Ethan?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. "Yeah, who's asking?" He grinned, a chilling, predatory grin, and crossed his arms. "Heard you were having some family problems. Thought I might be able to help." The guy's tone and body language screamed trouble. I didn't know who he was or what he wanted, but I wasn't in the mood for games. "I don't need any help," I said, opening my car door. "Maybe not the kind you're thinking of," he replied casually, "but someone in your family contacted me, said you were giving them a hard time, offered me a little something to persuade you to change your mind." I froze. "What the hell? You're kidding me, right?" I said, hoping this was some kind of weird prank. He raised an eyebrow. "Do I look like I'm joking?" "Look, I'm not here to hurt you, okay?" he continued, his tone deceptively calm. "I'm just here to talk. But if you keep pushing your family the way you have been, things might escalate. And trust me, you don't want that." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who sent you?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he gave me a knowing look and said, "Let's just say, not everyone is happy with the way you're handling things. You've got two choices. Either you back off, or things are going to get ugly for you. And trust me, you don't want that." I sat there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Someone in my family, my own flesh and blood, had gone so far as to hire this guy to intimidate me. I had a pretty good idea who it was too. Aunt Linda had always been the type to take things too far. I'm not afraid of you, I finally said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. You should be afraid of how far your own people are willing to go, he replied, his eyes glinting in the dim light. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. I sat in my car for a long time after that, trying to calm down. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. It had crossed the line into something darker, something I hadn't expected. The next day, I called my grandmother and told her what had happened. She wasn't surprised. "It's Linda, isn't it?" she asked, her voice weary. "I wouldn't put it past her," Grandma sighed. "She's always been a snake when it comes to getting her way. But listen to me, Ethan. Don't let her intimidate you. You have every right to live your life. They've been using you for too long." "I know, but this is crazy. I can't believe anyone in my family would go this far." "Believe it," she said grimly. "People can do ugly things when money is involved. You have to be careful, and don't worry, I'll take care of Linda." True to her word, Grandma confronted Linda later that day. Of course, Linda denied everything, but I wasn't buying it. The family rift grew even deeper after that. Grandma stood firmly in my corner, while Linda and my parents dug in on the other side. Chloe barely spoke to me. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? Some random guy threatened me because my family didn't like that I wasn't supporting them anymore? It wasn't exactly hard evidence. Instead, I started taking precautions. I changed my routines, avoided coming home late, and made sure my phone was always charged. But it wasn't over. It was just getting started. For a few days, things were quiet. No more creepy guys lurking in parking lots, no more threatening messages. I figured Grandma must have scared Linda into backing off. But of course, with my family, quiet never lasted long. It started with Chloe. Out of nowhere, she texted me and said she wanted to talk. I wasn't really in the mood, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at a coffee shop near campus, where she was still taking classes. She looked different, more serious, maybe even nervous, which was not like her. "Hey," I said, sitting across from her. "What's this about?" She stirred her coffee for a moment before answering, her eyes avoiding mine. I have to apologize." I almost choked on my drink. "Chloe, apologize?" I said, my voice laced with disbelief. "I talked to Grandma," she continued, finally meeting my gaze. "She made me realize that I've been a bit of a brat." "A bit?" I raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on my lips. "Okay, more than a little," she admitted with a sigh. "I've been thinking about everything you've done for me. I know I've taken advantage of you. I'm sorry." I didn't know how to respond. For years, I'd been the one keeping her afloat. And now, after all the drama, she was suddenly having a change of heart. It felt wrong, suspicious. "Why now?" I asked, my voice guarded. Because things are getting out of hand," she said quietly, her gaze flickering nervously around the coffee shop. "I heard Aunt Linda talking to Mom. They were talking about lawyers and how they might fight you for the house." I stared at her, my jaw dropping. "They're kidding me, right? They actually want to take me to court?" She nodded. "They think you're bluffing about selling it. Aunt Linda has a guy who owes her a favor. She's trying to see if she can get you into legal trouble to stop you." Unbelievable. I leaned back in my chair and let the anger wash over me. This was exactly the kind of petty, underhanded move Linda would make. "So, what? You want me to make peace with them? Forget about selling the house?" "No," Chloe said firmly, shaking her head. "I think you should do what's best for you. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I'm tired of the fighting. I'll figure out how to finish school without your help." I studied her for a moment, trying to gauge her sincerity. She actually looked remorseful. Maybe Grandma had gotten through to her after all. "All right," I said slowly. "Good, but you'd better keep it that way, Chloe. I'm not getting sucked back into this mess." "I won't," she promised, her eyes meeting mine. For once, I believed her. Later that night, I got a call from Grandma. "I heard you talk to Chloe," she said. "Yeah, and I think she's finally waking up." "Good," Grandma said, "but don't get too comfortable. Linda has been stirring up more trouble. She came over here today ranting about how she's going to teach you a lesson." I told her she was being silly, but you know how she is." "Yeah, I know," I muttered. "She doesn't know when to stop." "She's desperate, Ethan," Grandma warned. "And desperate people do stupid things. You have to stay one step ahead of her." She wasn't wrong. The next day, I was served with legal papers. Aunt Linda had actually gone through with it. She was trying to block the sale of the house. The lawsuit was flimsy, based on some nonsense about family rights and emotional distress, but it was still going to cost me time and money to fight it. I called my lawyer, a guy named Eric who'd helped me with some financial stuff before. He laughed when I told him about the case. "This is ridiculous," he said. "They don't have a leg to stand on. We'll get it thrown out. But it might take a few weeks." "Great," I said sarcastically. "Just what I needed." Over the next few weeks, things went from annoying to downright hostile. Aunt Linda started spreading rumors about me to the rest of the extended family. I got calls from cousins, aunts, uncles, even distant relatives, all asking what the hell was going on. According to Linda, I was trying to throw my parents out on the street because I was greedy and bitter. Grandma tried to do damage control, but the gossip spread like wildfire. Suddenly, I was the black sheep of the family. People who hadn't spoken to me in years were now calling to criticize me. It was crazy. But the real kicker came one night when someone broke into my car. They didn't take anything, they just smashed the windows and slashed the tires. I knew it wasn't a random act. It was a message. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was turning into an all-out war. After the lawsuit was dismissed, it didn't even make it past the first hearing, Linda lost her mind. She doubled down on the smear campaign, telling anyone who'd listen that I was a monster. Even people I thought might be on my side turned their backs. Family tensions boiled over. Grandma tried to rally support for me, but there were too many people who either believed Linda's lies or didn't want to get involved. Chloe stayed out of the fight, at least for a while. She kept her word and got a part-time job. For a brief moment, I thought she might be the only one who understood me. But then Linda and my parents got to her. I heard through the grapevine that they laid a heavy guilt trip on her. Eventually, she gave in and distanced herself from me. I got a text from her one night that said, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I just can't take the pressure anymore. Maybe things will calm down after a while. Take care of yourself." That was the last I heard from her. As for my parents, they never forgave me for trying to sell the house. After the court ruled in my favor, I went ahead with the sale. I offered them money from the proceeds so they could find a new place to live, but they refused out of sheer spite. Instead, they moved back into the tiny, run-down house we'd grown up in. They told everyone that I had abandoned them. From that point on, I was dead to them. Even Grandma, who had stood by me all along, finally got tired of the drama. "I love you, Ethan," she told me one day, her voice thick with sadness. "But this fight is tearing the family apart. I need peace in my old age. I can't do this anymore." I understood. I didn't blame her, but the truth hit me like a brick. I had no family left. Linda, Chloe, my parents, and all of my extended family had completely cut me off. My phone stopped buzzing with texts and calls. The silence was deafening at first, but then I came to appreciate it. I sold the house and paid off my debts. With that weight lifted, I finally had room to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't working 3 jobs. I cut back to 1 job, bartending, and started focusing on myself. I even took a weekend trip out of town, something I never had the time or money to do before. It's been over a year now. No one has reached out. Not my parents, not Chloe, not even Aunt Linda, who probably still hates me with a passion. I've come to terms with it. I'm no longer the family scapegoat or workhorse. I'm free. It's a lonely kind of freedom, but I've learned to live with it. I've even made some new friends, real friends who don't see me as a walking ATM. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I could have handled things differently. Maybe if I had set boundaries earlier, things wouldn't have blown up the way they did. But deep down, I know it wouldn't have made much difference. My family never saw me as a person. I was just a tool to them, a way to solve their problems. I'll probably never have a relationship with them again. But you know what? I don't need them anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first, and it feels good. So that's my story. Thanks for listening. I know it's a lot to take in, but it feels good to finally get it all out there. If you have any thoughts or advice, I'm all ears.